we'll leave the link at thegrandsolarminimum.com, where Mari takes great time in putting all this together. And I'm not even going to say his name, okay? Here's his face. This guy says global warming predictions have come true. He can prove it, question mark. They're talking about man bear pig guy here. When asked Sunday about his 2006 prediction that we would reach a point of no return in 10 years if we didn't cut human greenhouse gas emissions, climate alarmist in chief, you know who, man bear pig, implied that his forecast was exactly right. I think he spent a little bit too much time in Colorado, if you know what I mean. No, that's not a jab at Colorado because it's a beautiful state, but we all know what herb is legal there. Anyway, some changes unfortunately have already been locked in place, is what he told Jonathan Karl at ABC, sister network of the Clinton News Network, by the way. Sea level increases are going to continue no matter what we do now, but we can prevent a much larger sea level increases, more rapid increases in temperature. The heat wave was in Europe. Now it's in Arctic. We're seeing huge melting of the ice there. So the warnings of the scientists 10, 20, 30 years ago, unfortunately, were accurate. Okay, so he's doing a pretty good job at deflecting here. But he's doing a horrible job at getting his facts straight. The heat wave was in Europe. Yes, if you want to call it a heat wave. Again, I think Europe probably got the worst of it compared to the United States, so I'll give him credit for not mentioning the minor heat wave that we had in the U.S. We did have a little bit more damage from the European heat wave than we did here in the U.S. But also, it's fair to mention that how many times did we find errors in the reporting and temperatures in France during the hottest day of the year, or whatever it was out there? Their all-time high temperature was proven to be from a site that basically was giving some erroneous reports and could not be possible, apparently. Rooftops, airports, you name it. These temperature readings from the surface are in areas that favor warmer temperatures. Rooftop slated roofs. Runways at airports with all that jet exhaust everywhere. Yeah, it's going to be a little warmer at the airport. Anyway, Man Bear Pig goes on to lie about how, despite all this gloom, he's found the good news in Democratic presidential field, in which virtually all the candidates agreed that there's either a top issue or one of two top issues is climate change. So what has Man Bear Pig been predicting for the planet in this horror movie, An Inconvenient Truth, he claimed? He says sea levels could rise as much as 20 feet. He didn't provide the timeline, which was shrewd on his part. Absolutely. But even if he had said 20 inches over 20 years, he'd still been wrong. That's important to mention. He also said that with the rise... Oh, by the way, NOAA says, and we have a hard time trusting them, but they only say there's 1/8 of an inch of rise per year. So, okay, 20 inches over 20 years. That math's not adding up, Mr. Man Bear Pig. Storms are growing stronger and going to grow stronger. And there's no evidence of that. And here's the link. Again, for all you people saying, oh, that's just from a blog. Let's click on it together. Can we blame hurricanes on climate change? Not so fast. Article that came out in October 2018. Go ahead and read it for yourselves, folks. Again, another debunk for Man Bear Pig. He says that a volcano, Mount Kilimanjaro, was losing its... What? Kilimanjaro. You say Manjaro, I say Manjaro. I'm from Southwest Ohio. There's an accent down there, okay? It's Daytonian. Jeez, get off my back, Mari.
We love you.
Yeah, I bet you do. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield right now. It's losing its snow cap due to global warming. By April 2018, the mountain glaciers were taking their greatest snowfall in years. 2 months later, what was it again? Kilimanjaro?
Whatever you say, Jake.
Kilimanjaro was covered by snow, and that's how you say it in Dayton, Ohio, for an unusually long stint. But it's possible that all the snow and ice will soon be gone. Oh, wait. It's because it's a volcano that's been dormant and it could erupt. So again, just a small claim here that he said that was true is not true. Again, he's lying again. point of no return. If we've truly gotten this far, why even care? Virtually all of the Democratic candidates have agreed that global warming is a top issue. If we had passed the point of no return, there would be no reason to maintain hope. The fact that Man Bear Pig looking for a savior among the candidates means that he even doesn't believe things have gone too far. Exactly. Thank you, guest writer here at What's Up With That. After the movie, Man Bear Pig was found claiming that polar bears' habitat is melting and they are literally being forced off the planet, claims Man Bear Pig. It's impossible. It's possible, however, that there are 4 times as many polar bears as there were in the 1960s. Even if there's not 4 times the amount, they have not been forced off the planet. I believe also the reason why we saw more polar bears in Russian cities, A, you have more population, so the food is going to be a little bit more scarce, and B, with all that ice growth up there, okay, they're crossing areas that they couldn't cross before because of the global warming melting the ice. But now it's coming back. Maybe these guys are wandering further south because they can do that now to look for food. Also in 2007, Man Bear Pig making statements about possibility of complete lack of summer sea ice in the Arctic by as early as 2013. Fact checker Snopes, which leans so hard left that it often falls over, it has to pick itself up, said before concluding that Man Bear Pig definitely erred in his use of preliminary projections and misrepresentations of research. Ooh, in your face from Snopes. How about that, Man Bear Pig? But again, he wants to mention the warming in the Arctic and the melt that happened on the western part near Alaska, but doesn't talk about the strong ice gain in the eastern part towards Nova Scotia and Greenland and that part of the Atlantic. He doesn't talk about that growth. This is typical melting right now. One side melts, the other side gets stronger. And I might add that he's talking about melting ice in the middle of summer in the northern hemisphere. Good grief. When's it going to stop with this guy? And the sad thing is he doesn't know when to quit. So now we know he's got his hands in the cookie jar for the Beyond Meat Corporation. He's not only a stakeholder, no pun intended, but he's also an advisor on the board. And he is standing to make millions if one of these whack jobs on the left get elected president and they start implementing the Green New Deal nationwide. And you just saw the interview with Mark Morano. They want to ban beef, get rid of the cows. So we're going to get rid of the ranchers now? So farmers, get ready. You're not going to be able to raise cattle anymore. And it's not just cattle, because it's all meat they want to get rid of. Pork. Say goodbye to the piggies. Chickens, I doubt. That's too much protein in there. I can't imagine their chicken poop is causing, although it does make wonderful fertilizer, I've been told. What a mess this Green New Deal is. And if it got enforced nationally, because of one of these presidents winning the election, your job's going to go away. Your bills are going to go up. Your food cost is going to go up. Your insurance is going to go up. And what are they replacing these jobs with? What are these farmers of 20, 30 years? What are they going to go do for a living now? I mean, seriously, what are they going to do for, what are you going to offer them a job at Starbucks? Making someone's latte? I'm not saying that farmers are stupid and can't find a good job afterwards, but seriously, if you're going to take away something they know, they're experts at this. This is what they do. This is what they're born to do. Thanks to farmers, our world thrives. Whether it's raising crop, vegetation, or cattle, or pork, whatever. Again, I couldn't imagine being in my field for 20, 30 years, and then all of a sudden, the government implies new policies that bans my profession. I don't want to do anything. I mean, I wish I could do this full time. This would be amazing. You guys would probably be tired. I'd be on the air 2 or 3 times a day if this was something I could do full time. But let's just say, for instance, that this is just always going to be a side project for me, and the current field that I'm in gets banned. And I love what I do for a living. It's not the best, but I like it. I'm not really in the mood at my age to go out looking for a new profession, to look out for a new job, or get into a different field. I'm 41 going on 42. No, thank you. I can't imagine people who are older than me being told all of a sudden, hey, by the way, can't do this anymore. Yeah, here's an application. You can go be a Walmart greeter or something. I don't know. We'll help you find some kind of job. No, that's not going to cut it. That's why it's important, folks, that if anything, most of you probably vote conservative. Those of you who are on the fence, if you like a job, if you like affordable food pricing and affordable energy, and if you like staying warm, please vote conservative this year. This year, or I'm sorry, 2020, it's going to be the most important election of our lifetime. And I'm not saying that because of how great any candidate is. I'm saying that because of what's at stake right now. The folks that are tuned in right now watching this program are aware that the grand solar minimum is upon us in 2020 and beyond. And we know the difficulties that we're going to have with solar and wind, and I'll get right into that, actually. I've been babbling on here about this guy. Actually, where is the 2 articles, babe? Oh, never mind. That one didn't have a picture with it. So let's start with the charging stations. The big concern about the charging stations. And this is one of those things where I hope maybe that this article puts off fake numbers. That way people get maybe overwhelmed about trying to hack the power grid. But they're saying that a fleet of just 1,000 people simultaneously charging electric vehicles would be adequate for mounting an attack whose effects could rival the blackout that affected the city's west side last month. They're talking about a grid attack that somehow there's a way to trigger a virus through 1,000 people simultaneously using these charging stations throughout the area. 1,000 at the same time. You're probably sitting there going, okay, what is the likelihood? Who knows? Who knows what the likelihood of it is? I mean, with all the craziness that we're experiencing right now in the world, how hard is it to get 1,000 activists together and say, let's do it? Let's do it. So that's one scary part. Right now, we don't have, you can plug in 1.1 million computers right now, and it's not going to be the reason why the power grid gets hacked. So, yeah, this is kind of a fear porn article about electric cars and the vulnerability that is possible of hacking the power grid. Okay, this is just one thing. All right. Big wind, blacklisted. Here's another article. Congress created the production tax credit for wind energy in 1992. In other words, wind turbine owners receive a tax credit for each kilowatt of an hour of electricity their turbine creates, whether the electricity is needed or not. The production tax credit was also supposed to have expired on 1999, but instead Congress has repeatedly extended it after nearly 3 decades of propping up the wind industry. It is past time to let this tax credit expire. Addressing the issue of wind production tax credit Americans for Limited Government, President Rick Manning, wind energy development is no longer a nascent industry, having grown from 0.7% of grid in 2007 to 6.6%, 11 years later? At 275 billion kilowatts, the rationale behind the wind production tax credit has always been that it's necessary to attract investors. Manning added that wind energy development has matured to the point where government subsidization of billionaires like Warren Buffett cannot be justified, neither from an energy production standpoint nor a fiscal one. There are plenty of reasons for ending the tax credit, and here are some of them. Point one, wind energy is unreliable. Wind turbines requires winds of 6 to 9 miles per hour to produce electricity. When wind speeds reach approximately 55 miles per hour, turbines shut down to prevent damage to equipment. Wind turbines also shut down in extremely cold weather. Grand solar minimum, folks. Okay? That's what I got to say about your wind turbines. Right there in that first paragraph, everything that it's mentioning right now is we're going to experience that as well in the grand solar minimum. Due to this unreliability, relatively large amounts of backup power capacity must be kept available. They don't have that capability yet. Wind energy often requires the construction of a costly new high voltage transmission lines. We've talked about this too. They're talking about the maintenance cost and how much it's going to cost to install. Generating electricity from wind requires much more land than does coal, natural gas, nuclear, or even solar power. According to the 2017 study, generating a megawatt of electricity from coal, natural gas, or nuclear power requires about 12 acres. Producing 1 megawatt of electricity from a solar energy requires 43.5 acres, and harnessing wind, 70.6 acres. All right, so it's a waste of space, basically, right? Waste of space, shuts down in extreme cold, and it shuts down at 55 mile per hour winds, which is possible when you're dealing with high winds, storms coming in through wherever it is. So if this thing shuts down, how many hours does it stay shut down? How much time are we losing on electricity that could be made? 6 to 9 miles an hour for consistent to produce electricity. All right, see where I'm going with this? The environmental disaster of solar. The picture caught my eye. The picture caught my eye. I don't need to read this. Look at that. You just gotta look at it, folks. I mean, look at it.
Look at it.
The mess. That is an absolute mess. And this is just one solar field. Is it abandoned? Did people just give up? Was this from a storm? Of course, they use these pictures and don't tell us what we're looking at here most of the time, but disposal of decommissioned solar panels in regular landfills is not recommended in case modules break, toxic materials leach into the soil. But where do most decommissioned panels go? Landfills. Recycling is often recommended, but is not practicable because recycling costs more than the economic values of the materials recovered, which is why most solar panels end up in landfills. So we know that it's harmful to the environment to put them in landfills, and we still do it. How about we get a group together about that instead of talking about all the pollution from carbon? Let's talk about the dangerous toxins that are in these solar panels, and let's have an outcry about why landfills we're finding these burned out used solar panels or damaged from storms. This is just an example though, guys. I wanted to show you this because this is just an example. Let's say this is a solar field next, and maybe this was a windstorm, maybe this was a tornado that came through, maybe this was a hailstorm and these things got rocked. I can actually see a couple holes in some of these panels, so I'm imagining this probably was after a hailstorm. Who's going to rebuild this? How much power will this affect the grid if this one particular field was out of commission? On top of the fact, maybe that day that the solar panel field was also out of commission, guess what? It wasn't windy enough, so we didn't produce any electricity from the wind turbine. Now we have a new disaster to deal with. There's no power to this local area that has wind turbines with no wind and solar panels that are not functioning to harvest electricity. So how are you going to stay warm? How are you going to light your house? You're not. But yet there's plenty of people out there who want to be completely carbon free by 2050. Tell you something right now, by 2050, they're going to wish that greenhouse gases was cause of warming, because they would be pumping CO2 into the atmosphere on a minute by minute basis. I promise that, if it really happened that way. So here's the fear porn, I guess. Electric car charging stations may be portals for power grid cyber attacks. Big Wind is blacklisted, and we've already talked about a community in Michigan. 2009, they spent $500,000 on the investment of wind turbines, only to tear them all down because it cost too much to maintain them. And of course, the environmental disaster of solar energy. So, guys, I guess what I'm trying to say is green is not really that good for the environment. If you look at it, it's not going to keep us warm. It's not going to help us keep those water treatment plants up that keep that water drinkable. Do you see the picture I'm painting? Imagine these policies being implemented by the left, going through a grand solar minimum, which is going to give us climate challenges. It's going to give us agriculture challenges, on top of the fact that our government, our world government, wants to mess with our power supply and make it more expensive and make it less reliable during a challenging climate. It's time to wake up, folks. Oh, and this girl here. I'm not going to get too deep into this article here. You guys can click on it. But according to this article here, Greta sailing across the Atlantic Ocean is time consuming. There's more manpower involved because when they get to New York, they're just going to have those sailors turn that boat right back around and sail back across the Atlantic. What this article is trying to imply is that there are more CO2 emissions coming out of this sailboat in its journey to New York than the flight itself. You take the flight, you also cut back on the manpower. They don't need a crew to run a ship. It's a joke. And the article cites that the reason why they're doing this is to show people, like, everybody's talking about we got to do something and nobody does anything, so we're doing something. Oh, you're doing something, all right. You're putting your 16-year-old daughter in harm's way. I mean, let's face it, folks. People sailing from one part of the world across the Atlantic to the other, that's done for world records and Guinness Book of World Records and stuff like that. This is not something that I would recommend or prefer to do with my children. I'd want to keep them safe. Now, not saying that an airplane is safer. You could always crash into the ocean. I get that. But we're less likely to see that than we are on an unfortunate accident during rough seas or a storm. I'm sure they have talented navigational people. But guys, hey, what I would be scary about is all their GPS and everything is ran off of solar energy. So they're relying on their navigation equipment to work based on their solar and wind power operations. That is scary. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.